Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. We've got a few more people to turn up, so we're going to wait a couple of minutes and then we will get started.
Good to see you, Kath, Sherry-Ann, Gaynor, Ben.
Yeah, it's that awkward moment, isn't it, where you're like, what do we talk about before everyone arrives?
Probably not what we normally talk about.
No, definitely not clothes and shoes and bags. Not that we're cliche or anything.
We're all over the UK today, aren't we? So I'm in Leeds. Gaynor, you're over Manchester way. On mute. We've got Ben live from Sheffield. Sherry-Ann, you're up in the northeast, Northumberland.
I am, yeah.
And Kath, I never know where you are, Kath. Where are you today?
I am in wonderful Wigan today.
Wonderful Wigan. There we go. Fabulous.
Okay, so we've got lots of stuff to cover today, so I'm going to jump in. People can join us as they go. But firstly, a big hello and thank you for joining us on our first ever business surgery, where we'll be answering your questions live. I'm Ben Wright, founder and chief innovation officer at Melo, and I will be your host for the day. For anyone not familiar with Melo, we're a consultancy firm working exclusively with financial planning businesses to help them grow and then sell when the time is right. Now, the idea from today came from us seeing this type of format in a different setting, where there were a group of different businesses all getting advice together. And whilst they were different businesses, they all had common problems they were trying to face. So we thought, actually, by getting you to send in your questions, even if your question isn't the one we're answering, you might get some useful nuggets from that you can work in your own business. Today is all about questions and answers, so please do send through any questions you've got in the Q&A. We'll be seeing them popping up and I'll make sure that they are asked across to our panel. We also asked for questions in advance and we've got quite a few through actually. I think we've had a couple of quite prolific question askers, so hopefully we will get through as many of those as we can. For anything that we don't get through, we'll send out a Q&A document after the webinar with answers to those questions, along with a recording, which feel free to send on to anyone who you think will benefit. Now, before we jump into the questions, important disclaimer, there are many different types of businesses who all operate in different ways. We're going to be answering questions kind of from the hip with limited information. So it'll be our best thoughts in the moment. They might not be the exact best things for you. And if you're not sure, you should always seek professional advice. If you do want to speak to any of us after the webinar, there's a space in the feedback form to drop in your details and we will be in touch to talk about your business further. Okay. So with that out of the way, let's do a formal introduction to our panelists. We will go around and if you could all just do a little bit of a snippet as to who you are and what you do at Melo, starting with Vicky.
Oh, you got me then, just as I was taking a gulp of my coffee. So, hey, morning, everybody. My name is Vicky and I am the CEO here at Melo. My background is in financial planning. I'm a chartered financial planner by profession. I absolutely adore the profession and everything that it does and everything that it brings to people. I sold my business at the end of 2018 and made the move into the exit space. And over the last 6.5 years, I've been supporting business owners who are looking to sell. So thank you, Ben, for the intro.
Thank you, Vicky. Let's go next to Sherry-Ann.
Great start from me. Couldn't find the mute button. Hi, everyone. I'm Sherry-Ann Baxter-Blythe. I am an exit partner at Melo, so I work alongside Vicky to help businesses who are looking at succession planning and selling. I recently sold my own business about 3 months ago, didn't have enough time for a break and straight into my new role at Melo. My goal was to help other people go through what I've just been through with my own family business called Univigil.
Thank you, Sherry-Ann. Let's next go to Kath.
Hi, everyone. So I am Kath Harvey. I'm head of progress at Melo. What I mainly do is go into firms and our process is a diagnostic. So it's generally a 2-day deep dive and we look at absolutely everything in businesses from proposition and process right through to people, tech, data, finance, sales and marketing, compliance, governance, everything. So I go around the country working with leadership teams, boards and exec teams, and I am a chartered financial planner. I've worked as an operations director and client services director in financial planning practice, and I've delivered due diligence on several acquisitions now. I've also worked at group level, integrating smaller firms into bigger firms. So that's me.
Thank you, Kath. And last but not least, Gaynor.
Hi, my name's Gaynor Rigby. My career started in North America, working with an entrepreneurial coaching organization, working with all kinds of businesses. And then I transitioned from there over back to the UK and was managing partner at a wealth management business in the Northwest, which we grew 10 times over the 10 years that I was there, with lots of accolades and badges that we got along the way. So my background really is a passion for business and making them better, and the fun and exciting ride that it can be when you're participating and growing any kind of business.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gaynor. Okay, let's jump into the questions. Now, don't be shy. Stick your questions in the chat and we will answer them, but we will kick off with some that got submitted before today. Interestingly, most of them were submitted anonymously. So it sounds like people are a little bit nervous about stepping forward with stuff, which is understandable. We're happy to do anonymous questions. Okay, so our first question. We are looking to sell, but it's hard to know who to sell to. We like the idea of selling to a smaller local business, but we think we'll get more money from a consolidator. Any advice? Let's go, Vicky.
Oh, I was going to say, yes, let me take this one, an exits question. We've got a saying here at Melo, right, which is culture before cash. Because the reality is you don't actually know what your business is sold for until the last check hits your bank account. And the way that most deals are structured in our space is you receive an amount of money on completion, and then the rest of the money comes through via what we call conditional deferred consideration. So what that means is you've got to hit certain targets to achieve the rest of your money. And that might be retaining the clients, retaining the ongoing advice revenue, retaining the profitability that's been acquired, or it could be a blend of all of those points. And the reason I mention that is because it's so important, Ben, for business owners to look beyond the headline rate. And yes, consolidators can put forward offers that, you know, in terms of sort of a headline valuation may look stronger, but it's really all about what you end up with in your back pocket once you've had all of your payments out. And that's where sometimes, you know, taking a look at the local acquirers as well as the nationals, it gives you that real understanding of what is the culture in that organization and how does that culture match and align to the culture that I run in my business. When you as a business owner come to structure a deal, as the shareholders, as the managing partners, when you come to structure a deal, that's one part of it. But the true success is actually how your stakeholders react to the deal once it's complete. And your key stakeholders are your staff and your clients. So quite often we do find that business owners, when they look out into the market, may find a local acquirer that has that cultural alignment, you know, sort of stronger with them because they've got the local presence. They operate in a similar manner. Now, having said that, I think what's really important when business owners are coming to sell, and you only get one shot to do it right, what's really important is to, I suppose, come in with a fairly open mind, you know, really understand like what your objectives are, kick those around, understand what's important to you, but then meet with different flavors and types of acquirers. Because if you take a really measured, steady approach, you can really understand like what is out there and how might it work. So sometimes we have owners that think a local business is going to be more aligned to them. And then actually, when they start to meet with some of the larger nationals or the consolidators, they actually find a really strong match that maybe they weren't expecting. And equally, we might see it the other way around as well. So let's start with a blank sheet of paper, understand what your objectives are, meet with a whole load of various acquirers, and, you know, kind of go from there. I know Sherry Ann, having gone through the process with Melo and met with, you know, a lot of different types of acquirers, I'm sure she's got some thoughts to add to this as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think the last bit that you said, Vicky, really echoed well with me, because we went through, you know, when, as a chartered marketer running a business across a couple of sites, we wanted to get something that was more national, but still had that kind of like local brand element. So it was really hard for us to find that. But what you tend to find is that actually sometimes you can find that kind of local presence, but still have a backing from a bigger consolidator behind the scenes and have the best of both worlds. But it won't be until you go through the process that you actually start to learn about all of these different people. So one thing we do at Melo is we get people to really keep an open mind about what it is that they want and the journey that they go through. Because every single step of the way, you'll learn something different and you'll change your mind every 10 seconds.
I think for me, and thank you both for answering that. And I think for me that the thing is about meeting multiple people, because most IFAs will get inbound calls several times a week. We want to buy your business, and it could be that you've had a great weekend, you come back in on a Monday, it's been an awful morning, you get the phone call, and you're like, okay. And then you start the conversation, and very quickly it can go down the route, down to a point where you're locked in. And actually, it's having multiple conversations where you can really understand the different types of people out there, and then you can pick which is your sweet spot and which is the right way to go for you. Thank you both. Okay, let's jump to our next question then. My partner and I are looking to grow our business and then exit in around 5 years. We've got 4 employed advisors plus the 2 of us. That'll be the owners. When should we think about stepping back from giving advice, or should we always keep some clients? Kath, what's your views?
I think it depends on what journey you're about to go on. So, I work with firms where the exec teams are stepping back from client work completely. And that is going to work for them because they have big, big plans to grow and scale. Other firms, it's just maybe not possible for owners and advisors to always step back from the client work. And sometimes that's a capacity issue, and it's maybe you don't have other bodies in the building. So I think it really, really depends on what your plans are. If you have big, ambitious plans to grow, I think you're probably looking at least as a management team needing to scale back your own client banks a bit, because it's very, very challenging being an advisor owner. I was speaking to a business owner last week who is a managing director, has a full client bank. One of the advisors is retiring, and they're talking about taking on more clients. And my advice to them is, whoa, wait a minute. Do you really have capacity for this, given what you're about to embark on? So I would say it depends on the journey that you're about to go on. If it's going to be a lot, and there's going to be, if you're doing M&A, someone needs to be on top of that. Are you going to have time to do client reviews as well? So I think it really depends on what your plans are, I would say.
Thanks, Kath. I think it's, for me, it is that normally businesses will get to a certain size where the leadership team have to be a leadership team and not an advice team. Yeah. But that will be different points for different businesses. Just to bring you in, Gaynor, obviously you worked in a large advice firm. What's your views?
Yeah, I think if you're going to grow your business, it needs somebody full-time on growing the business and keeping all the plates spinning and connecting all the dots. And obviously that's very difficult to do if you've got an advice hat on. The only caveat I would say to that is there is maybe a benefit, especially if you can get your leadership structure in place, a benefit to having a small number of clients, especially if you're the person who drives the marketing or drives, what you're saying out in the marketplace to get new clients. It is useful to have a hand in, is to hear what people are saying and kind of what the rumblings are or what people's concerns are, so that you can trickle that into your marketing department, or you can trickle that down to the other advisors about, things that might come up and things that you might want, to help them address. But I think predominantly, if you're the person you have to be and you want to grow your business, you would need to be focusing on that. Again, it is nuanced depending on the firm, but running a business is a full-time job.
Yeah, I think from an exit perspective as well, when we talk about, so when we look at business valuations, we tend to give business owners a parameter in terms of where their valuation might fall. And, if you wanted to have the ability to absolutely maximize where you kind of sit on that valuation parameter, by the point that you have exited or you have sold, essentially you've got yourself into a position where you've made yourself redundant from the firm, and you're not then bringing along that sort of key man risk. So we're working with a couple of firms at the moment where, you know, they started to think about their they were still growing, and they continue to grow. They're just going through the actual transaction of kind of doing the exit now, but they've been working on the succession piece at the same time as growing. So we've now got to the point of them going to sell. And essentially, it's great for the acquirers because they don't have this sort of transfer of clients to do from owner down to the rest of the team. That piece of work has already been done, and those clients have gone through a couple of review cycles now with the new advisors as well. So not only is that great, like for value from a valuation perspective and from the acquirer's perspective, it's also great for the sellers, because in terms of what I was saying earlier on about you leaving some cash on the table, when you've got that comfort that you've already done the succession piece, you've got a lot more comfort that those future payments are going to come through.
Can I just
Thank
say
you.
as well, just to round off, that the best run firms that I see have someone focusing on ops, whether it's an ops director, whether it's an MD that's focused on it. Those are the firms where they're keeping everything going behind the scenes, right? And those are the best run firms that I see, where they actually understand the benefit of having someone at a level, you know, at a high-ish level, focused on the mechanics of running the business, as Gaynor said, yeah?
Yeah, thanks, Kath. I was just going to kind of chip in there. Really, it might be okay to keep clients a bit longer, but you do need to have somebody whose day job is worried about running the business, because annual reviews have to get done, new business has to get done. If you think about that the whole time, it can be quite difficult to think about some of the business stuff which needs to get done. So let's just follow on that with another question, which is, I suppose, a little bit linked. How do I get my staff to step up? Is one of the questions that came in. And on a similar vein, how do I deal with an underperforming team member? And I think I'll start with just a reflection on some work we did with a firm quite recently. Really good firm, actually. They were doing most of the things right. But one of their complaints was, you know, that our staff are just staff. They're not stepping up. They're not giving anything, or they're just kind of following orders. And when we actually looked into it, they were being given orders, and they didn't really have any authority or autonomy to be able to do anything themselves anyway. So it was a case of they were doing what they thought was the right thing because the owners were just giving them direct orders for action, no decision making. If you need a decision made, come back to me. So whilst the owners were saying, I want them to be more entrepreneurial, they weren't creating the right environment for them to be entrepreneurial. So I think there's a little bit around, if you want your staff to be a bit more savvy with things, make more decisions, you have to quite clearly, I think, give them authority to do that, and almost say, it's okay for you to go away, figure it out, and then come back to me, and we'll just kind of sign off the answers. But it's positioning that delegated authority is an important way to help people feel more empowered with how they would work. And if you've got somebody who's underperforming, it could be that they either don't know what it is that you want them to do. So that's not being clear in that communication. They're doing what they think, but it's not what you originally wanted. It could be that they're not engaged in what's going off. And we find that sometimes, especially in kind of more administrative roles, they don't understand what their place is in the bigger picture. So having a real clear vision of this is how you contribute to our overall strategy can really help people. Or it could be that they just don't know what to do and they need more training and development. There are very few people in my experience who come to work wanting to do a bad job. It's normally that they haven't been given something which they need to help them do that good job.
Yeah,
Anybody
thanks
else
for that,
got a
Ben.
view?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think one of the
yeah.
things that we've used, I know in our own business, and we've used with a couple of other firms as well. I think it comes from traction, doesn't it, Ben? And it's quite an easy way to look at your team members and understand, you know, essentially whether you've got the right bums on seats, and, you know, where are their sort of training and development needs. You call it get it, want it, capacity to do it. And so essentially you could look at each of your sort of team members and say, you know, do they get the role? that they're in here? Do they want the role that they have here? And do they have the capacity? And that's the capacity in terms of time, but also, you know, just the capacity to be able to do that role. When you look at your staff members in quite a simplistic kind of way like that, you can then start to understand, right, well, then is it a training need? Or actually, have I got this person in the wrong seat? Would this person be better doing something else? And at times as well, maybe that person just isn't right for your business. And that's okay too. You know, it can be unfair for you to keep somebody in a business if actually the business isn't going in the direction that they want to go with their own careers. So sometimes you've got to have hard conversations. But I think, you know, what we see in the businesses we work with is that the owners do want to put the resource, the time, and the effort into their team members. It is just understanding and working out, you know, do I have the right bums on seats? Do they have more training needs? And then how can we as an organisation try to get them from where they are to where we want them to be?
I think as well, there's two things to go with that, isn't there, Vicky? Where on top of everything you've just said, you've got the engagement piece. So actually doing things like anonymous surveys, which we recently did at Melo, actually, to be able to give everyone an ability to say what they really, really feel without worrying about what they're saying, but also to create psychological safety within a business. And I know that's become a bit of a buzzword recently, but people have to feel safe enough to say to the leadership team and the owners of the business, this is how I feel, and know that they're not going to have any repercussions for themselves. So creating that no blame culture, that all feedback is welcome, and it doesn't matter what you say, that's how you feel in the moment, and we're not going to judge you long term. And I think collecting all of that with people being culturally aligned, and what else have I written down on my notepad, making sure that they've got, which is what Ben said, that they've got what they need to do the job. So quite often people will sit down and they will say, you're not doing this and I need you to do it. But really the question is, what tools haven't you got, or what support haven't I provided you as your manager to enable you to excel within this area that you're struggling with?
I also think as well, and something I say to firms all the time is give more and then ask for more. So if your staff have grumbles and they've got moans and they're not engaged and all of that, and we've done this work with clients, haven't we, Ben, where we have said, right, let's rework the benefits package. Okay, client service feel like an afterthought. Let's look at what we are doing for you. And then once we've given you the tools you need, as we've said, then give me more. Show me, show me.
Show me. I love the cat. Show me.
Show me,
It
show
is
me.
true, because as business owners, you can go so far, right? But you are still running a business. And, you know, they have to show you back. You've got to give the people the tools. You've got to give them a supportive environment. You've got to give them every chance to succeed. But then what have they got to do, Kath?
Show me.
Show me.
Thank you, everybody. Hopefully that helps for whoever sent that in. And if you do have any more questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A, and we will get those answered today as well. So let's shift to a question we've got on exits that came through. What are the main factors that determine sale value?
Oh, that's
Vicky
a good
or
one.
Sherry-Ann?
Vicky, you take that one.
For me to start. Okay, so we're very lucky in the financial planning profession because we can grow businesses and sell businesses that are worth on average double what all businesses across the UK and other sectors sell for. So, you know, you're in a great position if you're running a financial planning firm to create something of significant value. And the reason for that, there's a number of reasons for that, but it's the repeatable nature of the income primarily that drives those higher valuation multiples. So that's what an acquirer is looking for. They're looking for that safe, compliant, ongoing, recurring income that ticks all of the regulatory boxes, that nobody's going to come along and try to claw back, and that they can see is going to continue into the future. But whilst a business is going to have or be offered a stronger valuation if they have a high level of repeatable income in relation to their overall income, what is also important is to see new business revenue coming through. because that's the future growth. You know, that's the net asset increases. That's that ability to show that on an annual basis, as well as servicing your clients, you've also got strong new business flows coming in. Because what an acquirer wants to buy is an appreciating asset, something that's continuing to grow. Acquirers don't want to buy depreciating assets. So it's getting that balance right to be able to maximize that valuation. Now, in our world, you're going to hear a load about recurring revenue multiples, right? A lot of businesses are given values on that basis. But behind the scenes, in every single scenario, what the buyer is looking at is profitability. Essentially, that is their return on investment. So even if you are presented with an offer that says, we will pay you 4 times your recurring income, 4.5 times your recurring income, whatever that looks like, behind the scenes, the buyer has said, right, what profit are we generating from this? And so the key there is to run on healthy profit margins, as well as having a strong level of recurring, repeatable income. And both of those valuation metrics, as well as other things, you know, are looked at to kind of find that sweet spot in the middle. So they're the things that really kind of primarily drive valuations, Ben. It's the recurring revenue, it's the ability to attract new clients into the firm, it's strong, robust profit margins. But then in terms of really pushing the dial and trying to move up the valuation spectrum, if business owners have the ability to do this, that is having a really strong leadership team that an acquirer can look at and go, wow, we're not just acquiring revenue and profitability here. We're actually acquiring a leadership team that have got the ability to continue to drive this firm forwards, and that perhaps could even be a hub firm for us as well. And the point I raised earlier on around key man risk. You know, quite often business owners are also the business writers. They hold the relationships with professional introducers and all that other stuff. So it is also working on that strategy to reduce the key man risk on you, or being able to demonstrate to a buyer actually how through the transaction, you're not just going to transfer your clients in, but you're going to transfer in the trust as well, so that the buyers are able to continue to generate new business through your introducers and stuff like that, for example. Is there anything there, Sherry Ann, you would add?
Well, yeah, there are things, but you said everything pretty much. But I think she knows her stuff. That's the thing. But I think a couple of things I would like to add is that if you can understand the type of acquirers that you're sat in front of, there may be specific things that they're looking for, which although the underlying valuation will be what it's going to be, there might be just little bits that you can fine tune and tweak within the way that you're presenting yourself to add that little bit extra. So for example, there's a big push for a lot of firms to attract female clients. So if you can show that you're doing that and you've got a proven strategy, then that's going to add a little bit from a branding point of view. It might be that they're looking to introduce a fixed charging model and they've never done that before, but actually you've got a tried and tested way of how you're doing it, and that could be the start of a new hub and a new strategy. So it's just sitting down and saying, okay, what's unique about your business? What's the acquirer looking for? And bespoking how you tell that story and how you pitch your business to each meeting. And that's something that with our insight knowledge, we can help with essentially. And then I think the only other thing I was going to say, you touched upon growth potential, Vicky, but I think this is really important because if you're getting valued on an EBITDA basis, some inquirers will look at it and say, okay, we'll pay you this amount, but actually, if you grow your EBITDA, we will give you some growth targets and we will pay you based on those growth targets in year 1, 2, and 3 potentially. So we can, if you're a business that is growing, perhaps you've got a young financial advisor force that isn't generating its full potential, you can actually over 3 years generate more income from that and potentially get paid more as a result at the end of that. I think that's all right, isn't it, Vic?
I think
And
that,
just
yeah,
to,
you've hit the nail on the head there, Sherry. And I think what we're getting across here is that there are so many levers to pull
That's it.
when you're looking at structuring a deal and you're looking at your valuation. And of course, as I said earlier on, not just the amount you're getting on day one, but your ability to achieve those deferred consideration payments, or like Sherry Ann said, actually uplift those through growth as well. So, you know, quite often when we meet a business owner initially and we get to understand kind of their awareness or understanding of how deals are structured, it's not uncommon that the focus is on the multiple. And actually, once we get into it and we start to talk about all of the other ways that we can perhaps improve value or insulate the future value that's to come, or reduce the likelihood of the buyers coming back to try and, you know, take some of that value back, you all of a sudden realize that it's a complex scenario, but there's an art to it, isn't there, Sherry Ann? And when it all comes together, it's a bit like I watch it's they call it, I think it's Portrait Artist of the Year, which is
Oh my
brilliant.
God, I love that
I love that
program.
program so much.
And I
can
love
just
Landscape Artist of the Year as well.
just give me a Saturday afternoon with nothing to do when it's raining outside, and I'll just watch, yeah, episodes. But you know how they start with like a canvas and they just sort of throw on all these splodges of paint, and you're watching and you're thinking, how on earth is this going to turn into something? And then in the end, you know, it's this sort of this beautiful portrait. It's a bit like that with M&A, really. You know, when
I
you
love your
realize all of the
emphasis on
things.
storytelling, guys. I love the emphasis on, on telling the story
We
about
love
your
the
farm,
story.
right? It's so important because that's where you get the engagement and that's where you get the interest, isn't it? Tell your story. And also, the only other thing I would add is the shinier your farm is, the more quickly you can put your hands on the data and the information and all of that. That's presenting you in a very good light at the front end, isn't it? With any acquirer, whether it be a consolidator or whoever, yeah?
a
Yeah,
business
Definitely.
that's easy to run is easy to sell.
It's really funny you say that, because I literally written on my pad, and this is how in line we are, Kath. When you sell, you want it to be at its shiniest. How weird is that?
Thanks, everybody.
It's a professional pride thing though, right? Like I remember when you were going through the process, Sherry Ann, you know, doing the due diligence, you didn't just see it as a tick box exercise. You know, every single thing that you were presenting to that buyer, you wanted it to be full and accurate, and you wanted it to tell a story, and you did addendum notes so that the people that were receiving the information on the other side could understand it with clarity. Like you just totally got that through every step of the process, you were showcasing your business, and that negotiating the deal isn't kind of a let's sit down and negotiate. You know, actually negotiating a deal is something that you're doing all along by how you're presenting yourself and how you're picking up on certain cues and how you're aligning what your business can do with your understanding of those buyers' objectives. It's a fascinating topic. We're very lucky to be in this space.
Thank you, everybody, for your comments. A couple of quick things. Firstly, you mentioned EBITDA. I had that in a conversation with somebody last week, and they looked at me like I was crazy.
Yeah,
So can we just quickly explain, jargon busting, what is EBITDA? How is it different from gross profit, net profit? Just give people a bit of a flavour of what we're talking about.
Yeah, EBITDA essentially is your operating profit. So that's what an acquirer is going to look at. They're going to look at your profitability before interest and taxation, to really understand kind of the true operating profit of what they're acquiring. But what we have to do to work out what an EBITDA is to an acquirer is we have to take sellers through a process, which we call the process of adjustments. And this is something that often comes as a surprise to certain sellers, because what a buyer is looking at is not the profitability of your business whilst under your ownership. They're looking at the profitability of the business when they own it. And so to do that, essentially what the exercise we go through with sellers is we'll look at their operating profit the previous year, and we'll also look at kind of a current run rate of the business as well. But we'll look at the operating profit, and then we'll say, right, are there any costs that actually the buyer is not going to suffer moving forwards, because it would be unfair for the buyer to use a profit figure that had been reduced because of costs that actually they're not going to incur. So an example of that might be like you've done a website refresh and it's cost you 25 grand, or you've had some legal expenses and they're not going to repeat. So the first thing that we would do is we would essentially remove those costs, because we're saying to a buyer, you're not going to suffer those. The result of that is the profit figure, of course, goes up, right? But then what we have to look at is whether there's any adjustments that we need to make the other way. And usually the biggest adjustment that we need to make the other way is including market salaries for the advisors that are going to be taking the firm forwards. So to put that into context, like a business owner, if they are advising clients as well, and therefore when they sell, a new advisor is going to have to take on those relationships, that owner advisor might be paying themselves £12,000 as a salary because they want to stay within the threshold, and they might be paying themselves £40,000 as a pension contribution, for example. So what we would do is we would remove those costs, because as the shareholder who's selling, you're not going to be involved anymore moving forwards, or you're certainly not going to be a shareholder moving forwards. But then we need to say, what is a realistic market salary and package that we then need to replace? So that might be, it might be £100,000 that actually the buyer needs to include within their P&L to get to that EBITDA number, because they know that they've got to replace you with a commensurate market salary and a market package.
Thank you, Vicky. I think that makes it a lot clearer. There's so much jargon in our industry, especially as I'm finding in the M&A space, and it's useful just to be very clear on this is what we mean when we say these words. Now, we are getting a bit exit heavy, so I'm going to go back across and look more at the progress side of things. One of the questions we've had is, what's a good profit margin? Gaynor?
20 to 30% really is where you need to be. Again, with those fluctuations, you might have a year where you're staffing up. So it might go down a little bit and then you want it to come back up. Another ratio to look at just to check that you're on the right track and that you know where you're going is revenue per staff. So especially as you're staffing up, if you look at revenue per staff, you're going to see that the trajectory is actually on its way up. Versus kind of going in the opposite direction, because sometimes you think you're doing well with your revenue, but if you've got too much staff relative to it, that's going to impact some other things. So it's a good a little one just to do a quick maths on every now and again, just to check that you're not going in the wrong direction.
And is that your adjusted profit, Gaynor? So as Vicky was talking about there, taking out any exceptional items and that type of thing.
And I would also strongly suggest as well that you create your P&L and even before you're ready to go for your exit, and start running your P&L with those adjustments in, particularly the advisor pay. Then you're not having to go backwards, then you're not having to remember. And if you're trying to grow your profit, so you're getting in the multiples, you're seeing it live in real time, which should inform, hopefully, you know, better prudence and better decision making as you go. So, you know, a lot of people's P&Ls are a bit all over the place, and then they do like a big cleanup at the point of exit. I would, you know, I think a good way to go is you start that now, and then you've got all that data.
Sounds good. Thank you, Gaynor. Appreciate that. Now, we've got a question here that's, I think, is right up your street, Kath. My clients are all similar and get the same service, but I'm being told I need to segment. Why?
Okay. So segmentation is about what is your proposition? How are you differentiating what you're charging in fees? So you may have clients that are complex, that need higher touch. You may have a service proposition where, you know, you've got one client paying your very minimum, you've got a client paying a lot more. What are they getting for that? So in a lot of businesses we go into, obviously, you know, the ongoing fees are based on a percentage of, you know, the assets under advice, right? And, you know, what we see time and time again is that clients who are potentially paying double, triple, quadruple what another client is paying are getting the same service. The regulator wants people to get value for money. Okay, so you have to be able to say this client is paying more because they are getting more. So when we go into businesses, we look at, okay, does this client need more touch points? Are they more complex? What are their actual requirements? A lot of businesses now are moving towards pricing on value, right? Rather than on a percentage. So it's really the segmentation piece. And actually, you know, I speak to advisors and owners all the time who say, but I want all of my clients to get the same service. And we do. We want all of our clients to get a great service, right? But it has to be proportionate to what they are paying. That's the way that you can demonstrate value. And if your fair value assessments don't cover that properly, then you're not really going to meet what the regulator's wanting you to be doing in that space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you, Kath. Appreciate that. And as you talked about there, your kind of proposition is a big part of that segmentation and who gets what. Quick plug for anyone wanting to learn more about propositions. We have an upcoming webinar shortly with ATM Global talking about advisory versus discretionary portfolios in a post-consumer duty world. What are the risks and benefits? Could be an interesting session for anyone thinking about their proposition at the moment. So we've had a question in from Abby. Thank you very much indeed, Abby, for your question. Top tips for maximising efficiency. If you could only change 3 things in your firm, what would you do? Who wants to jump in with that one?
Can I take that?
Yeah, you go, Kath, first. Go for it.
Yeah. So, 3 things that the top things that you would be looking at. Number 1 is people. Have you got the right people in the building? Okay, so have you got the right bums on seats? Have you got the right people doing the right tasks? Okay. And then I would say looking at efficiencies from a streamlining point of view on tech, that can be game changing. You know, we're putting stuff into businesses now which are just completely game changing in terms of capturing information, the quality of the data that they're getting back from it. So I would be looking, it depends on your time frame to exit, right? And you know, we are saying whenever your time frame to exit is, you should be thinking about the end game, right? And working back the way. So it depends how long you've got to exit. But I would say if you've got more than 2-3 years to exit, you should really be looking at streamlining your tech stack. And then I think probably the number 3 for me is the client piece, you know, the client journey. How effective is that? How streamlined is it? How does it work for your clients? It's taking clunkiness out of process, I think, for me. That's where you can get incremental gains in efficiency. Take out the people that don't do the tasks very well, get people doing the right stuff, get your processes slick, and integrate your tech stack as much as you can. That would be my advice.
Thanks, Kath. Do you want to jump in, Sherry-Ann?
Yeah, I use a model that's widely known across marketing called the 5 Ps, which is product, price, place, promotion. And if you can look at productivity within each of those areas, for example, with price, have you got that set right, and is it actually doing what it needs to? Process is obvious, but it's how you build the culture around that. So if you can ensure that people understand that we are quite not obsessed, well, yeah, obsessed with efficiency and productivity, not because we want to do things quickly, we want to do things well, we want to better service to our clients, and we're going to achieve that within each person making the most of every hour in their day, and that's how you get that people element in as well. So it's bringing those 5 Ps together, building up that culture, so that people know that it's not about speed, it's about getting things done quickly but well.
I would say as well, and great answers, by the way, ladies, but sometimes you've got to go back, haven't you, to go forwards as business owners. And I think, you know, when you take a look at your business kind of through, you know, a fresh lens, potentially with some external support that might see things that maybe as a business owner you've become a little bit blind to, you might have to make some quite hard decisions for the future efficiency of your business. To put that into context, I suppose on the exit side, we're seeing more firms looking at what we call carve-outs to try to improve efficiency within their organization. So they're saying, you know, we're really restricted in terms of time. Everybody's really busy. We've kind of capped out. If we want to carry on bringing on new clients, then we're maybe going to have to go out and recruit. And actually, when you take a look under the bonnet, perhaps there are certain clients that are just, not profitable for you, or actually they're not getting the value that they should because you're not set up to be able to deal with that type of client. And, there are some great firms out there now who are very, very tech enabled and can deal with certain types of clients that, need a level of service, and they continuously deal with those throughout a day and more of a telephone based sort of quick in and out kind of manner. And that suits those clients. So we are seeing more firms, look at carve outs of clients that perhaps aren't their target to free them up with capacity to move forward and attract the clients that, are their target clients. But it can be done in a really nice way. Like, I know Kath is working with a business at the moment where they've actually partnered with a firm that can deal with a certain section of their clients in a better way than they can. So they have a commercial arrangement in place. The clients are aware of it as well. And that works not just for some existing clients who are now getting a better service from a tech solution, but it also works for future clients that or future referrals or future leads that come in, where either they can take those on because they fit with what they're looking to achieve from a client, or they can actually send them, to their partner firm.
I think the thing is that when you talk about selling or carve outs, people associate that with the end, and they're not ready for the end. But actually, there are a lot of firms out there where it's not about retirement or selling to end, but firms like my firm was, where it's selling to grow, selling to scale. And actually, if you look at all the things that Kath has just recommended that needs to be done from an efficiency point of view, if you don't have a pot of cash to be able to afford all of that up front, you've either got to go down the route of taking on extra debt, or you've got to look at a way that you can partner up with a firm who can inject that into your business very, very quickly, but in a very proven way. So you're not spending a lot of time researching the tech because they're using it and it's working and it's proven and tried and tested. So I think it's about thinking, what do you need as a business now, and how are you going to get there in the best way for your clients?
Can I just answer in a bit more granular way? If I was going to do 3 things that someone could just go off and do right after, one is look at your CRM and make sure that you're utilizing it to the maximum. So a lot of people have got it, they're paying the license fees, and then they're running data off a spreadsheet somewhere else, and there's multi-entry, and then you can't pull it in. So the first one is to try and get a grip on your CRM and what is going in and the MI that you want out. Along the same lines as that is looking actually at your advisor capacity in terms of the meetings they can have. If you've got growth plans in your business, when you're going to need to bring on someone else, how do you flex out what they can do? Because obviously an advisor and paying an advisor is a big portion of, it hits your revenue, it hits your profit, they're a big cost. And so you want to maximize that. So I would look at that. And the first thing I would do is what is your plan? And having a revenue plan, a new asset win plan, or a new client plan, what your profit is, and then everything goes against that, so that you don't get mission creep partway through the year of spending money or investing in things, and maybe your revenue's not come in, and you lose efficiencies. So it's like, what is your plan? Measure against it all the time. Use your CRM and get your advisor capacity nailed. Those would be my 3 rubber hits the road.
Thank you, everybody.
Having
a plan. I think having a plan is just absolutely essential for businesses. And from our experience, very few do. Most tend to do what they did last year, plus a bit more, or we'll just kind of roll along and it'll be okay. And it's only when you've got that plan that you can, as Gaynor said, you can start working towards it, putting things in place, putting those milestones in place. Mm-hmm. Now we've only got 10 minutes left. Today has absolutely flown, and there are a couple of questions that I would like to get out because I've been asked them personally a couple of times before, as well as them being sent in. Small business, team's been with us for 20 years. How do we tell them we're selling?
Oh, It's so hard, isn't it? This part, it really is. And I know that Sherry Ann, when we were going through the process, was so conscious of the team and at what point to tell them. And actually, Sherry Ann, you did the entire communication strategy, didn't you? So I think it would be great for just because it's so fresh, you know, you having gone through this. I think it'd be great for you to share your experience.
Sure. Yeah, it was really hard. Actually, just you talking about it now makes you know, send shivers up my spine. It's one of the first things that you think about, because when you've been running for a business for 25 years, you haven't got to where you have now for yourself. You've got to it because of, you know, 100 plus people that have paid their little part along the way. I think the way that I did it might not necessarily be the way that's right for everybody. I'm happy to share it, but the reason it went well is because I literally wrote a list of everyone in my company, and I asked myself the question, what do they need from this communication? And that feels like a lot of work, but if you can sit down and say, person A, I know they're going to be worried about this. Person B, actually, they're really positive, but I know that if I said this, it would work. And you might think that that creates a mishmash of communication, but what you start to realize is there are set personality types within your business. And actually, if you can communicate in a way that is bespoke and tailored to them, then you'll get it right. So one of the things that I highlighted is actually the leadership team that we had, that I built around us, were very close to us. Actually became like members of the extended family. So we felt it was right that we told them first, and we did that together in a private environment off-site. We had a PowerPoint presentation where we delivered everything that we wanted to set out, why we were doing what we were doing, who we were partnering up with, and then just sat back and listened to what they had to say, because it can be really easy to be defensive of the decisions that you've made. It can be easy to think that people are being negative, but actually they just want to be heard. They want to be listened to, and they want to be reassured. So it's really important when you tell them that you're not constantly trying to give an answer all the time or defend yourself, that you're actually saying, I hear you. I understand what you're saying. When we told the leadership team, that also gave us some confidence, because we told that story once. We had a bit of a patter going that we got used to, but we also said to the leadership team, can you give us feedback on what we've just told you and what we perhaps didn't get right, or we hadn't thought about that we need to tell when we tell the rest of the company. The other benefit of doing it that way is that they had time to actually digest the information before we then told the rest of the business, which meant that when people were looking to them for a response, they were a bit calmer. They were positive about what was happening. We'd answered their questions in around things like job security that were going to be really important to them, and continuity of business service in the way that processes were going to be run. The other thing we're telling the leadership team first is that quite often the leadership team are the roles that could potentially be cut out of a business. So they're going to want reassurance that actually I run the finance side of the company. I know the new company is going to take those things on. So what gaps am I going to have in my job? And does that mean I'm going to be made redundant? Those are their first thoughts. It's safety and security first. Then you tell the wider team, and again, you go through the same PowerPoint presentation and you go through the same journey. I think it's really important as well that you don't use phrases like nothing's going to change, because you don't want to set yourself up to have a workforce that think everything's going to stay the same, because in reality, it's not. You've tried to make sure that things that are important to them aren't going to change, but actually some things are going to change. Some things might be taken away, but some things will be put back in, which means that you might enjoy your job more. And before you answer any questions, just take a breath. Don't be quick to answer. Think about what you're saying and the repercussions that that could have later on down the line. And there's nothing wrong with saying, do you mind if I just think about that for a couple of minutes, and I'll come back to you in a second. There's nothing wrong with doing that, because then you can control what you're saying and the communication that you've got. This is a really emotional journey that you're going on at the moment, and it's scary. So you have to be in the right mindset before you tell your staff. So if you need that moment to say, oh, I'm not sure, that's absolutely fine. They're going to understand that. So
Thank you,
yeah,
Sherry-Ann.
that's roughly. I could talk about this for hours, and if anyone wants,
Can I just say,
more help,
Sherry-Ann, can I just say, Sherry-Ann, wow, wow, honestly, wow, because the level of care you have put in there around your team makes me a little bit emotional, actually. So wow, amazing.
Thank you. Hopefully, whoever asked that question, that gives you a bit more of a view on how to tackle it. But it is always a difficult subject.
And even if people are going through this, and even if they're not working with Melo, if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn because you're doing something separate or you're working with someone else that's supporting you, I'm a chartered marketer. I've got 20 years marketing experience, a lot of internal comms experience. I'm always willing to help people in our industry get this sort of thing right, because we are very passionate about making sure that what we do has a positive impact on our profession.
Thanks, Sherry-Ann. And that's a really good point, actually, is that we are, as a company, committed to try and push forward the profession. We would love to chat with you if you're having problems, you're not sure where to go next, you've got issues that you don't know who else you can speak to. This doesn't have to be like, you're going to sign up with us for a whatever. We're happy to have those conversations and have those chats, because as you've heard from today, we've all had a lot of life experience working in this sector in different types of businesses, and we're always happy to share in any way that we can that will help other people. So we are coming to the end of our time today, and there are some questions that haven't been answered. Really quick fire one. What's the average ongoing fee? You said to me earlier, Vicky, you knew what this was.
It's either 0.89 or 0.84. And that's the average across the UK. I would say that the majority of firms out there sit somewhere between the 0.75 and 1% ongoing. There is typically cap and collars as well, in terms of how high those prices can go. We see more so in the seller world, maybe fees that are as low as 0.5 in some scenarios, even a smidge lower than that. But certainly when we look out into the acquirer space or into the larger business space, the majority will sit between 0.75 and 1.
Thank you. I think every other question we've got is going to take a little bit too long to answer. So what we will do is we're going to put them together on a Q&A document and send them out to everybody after, so you can have a read through what our answers are. I particularly wanted to, and I'm gutted we didn't get to talk about technology and AI in particular. However, if you are interested in using AI in your business, seamless plug, we've got a webinar coming up with Saturn AI talking about how to use technology to make shift happen in your business. That is on the 21st of October at 12 o'clock. So that's all we've got time today. All we've got time for today. Thank you ever so much for the questions online. Thank you, Abby, for your question. Thank you for everything that was sent in beforehand. And thank you to our panelists. We will send out a recording of today's webinar. Feel free to pass it on to anyone you would think would benefit. And if you do want to talk to us, just drop your contact details in the form at the end of the Zoom session, and we would love to have a chat about anything that's keeping you up at night or that's on your mind. So thank you very much, everybody, and hopefully see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Nice to see you. Goodbye.